We're here in Short's Gardens, just off Drury Lane in London's Covent Garden, in the heart of London's Theatreland. 160 years ago it would have been Theatreland as well, but now it's a very respectable area. Then it would have been in the edges of one of the worst slums or rookeries in the entire city. Now imagine what the street would have been like. Farm animals would be herded through here, wild dogs running free. The smell would have been overpoweringly awful. The pavements would be teeming with thieves and pickpockets. Here might have been an eating house, over here a beer shop, and in the middle are pawnbrokers, where London's poor would go to hawk their few miserable possessions for pennies. Now imagine a normal trading morning in July 1844. 3 shots ring out. A passerby goes in, calls the nearest police officer. An hour later, Pike, the new head of the detective branch, is called to investigate. He goes in, he finds 2 bodies, blood smeared across the floor. He finds a 3rd body, he turns it over, he realizes he knows this person, but he can't acknowledge this, because to do so would be to admit his connection to one of the city's most powerful underworld receivers. This is how the detective branch begins. We're here in Bow Street, home to the original Bow Street Runners, where Pike served for 10 years. By the time of the present of the story, 1844, the Runners have been long since disbanded, but this still would have housed a magistrate's court like this one, and also the headquarters of the Holborn division of the new Metropolitan Police Force. It's here too that Pike's nemesis within the new police force, Benedict Pearce, has just been appointed as superintendent. Pearce, who's vain, punctilious, ambitious, who would like nothing better than to see Pike fail. And Pearce is dogged too, and he'll keep digging until he can find something that will threaten not just Pike's career and livelihood, but will possibly send him to prison and maybe even to the gallows. We're here surrounded by the grand buildings of state. Whitehall's behind me, the River Thames is over here. This would have been the headquarters of the newly created Metropolitan Police, and also home of the detective branch, comprising a handful of officers and 3 poky rooms, a reflection of their lowly status in the Metropolitan Police's hierarchy. Newly appointed as head of the detective branch, Detective Inspector Pike hopes to bring a scientific rationalism to the business of detection. But for Pike, it's also about the thrill of the chase. And the law is what keeps anarchy for the streets, but Pike knows the law is also a tool of the rich. And it's here that Pike must run his investigation to find the murderers in Short's Garden. It's here that he must placate the demands of his superiors. And it's here he must form a team of people around him to do the job properly. But spies are everywhere, and Pike must decide very quickly who he can trust and who is out to sell him up the river. Christopher Wren's Great Dome, as it would have been 160 years ago. Just near here on Paternoster Row, we find out at the beginning of the detective branch, Pike spent a particularly unhappy year in a church-run orphanage. So when the rector of a local parish winds up dead, beaten to death with a hammer, Pike's instincts aren't likely to be sympathetic towards the established church. But Pike is a police detective, part of the great machinery of state, and as he well knows, the links between church and state run deep. So when his investigation threatens to implicate senior figures in the church and the police, the forces begin to mobilise against him. Unrepentant, Pike comes here to St Paul's, storms up the steps and angrily confronts the Archdeacon of London inside the church in front of his congregation. A few hours later, Pike is summoned back to Scotland Yard to defend his actions to his paymasters. His career, his livelihood, the entire investigation hanging by a thread.